Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. Very quickly, I failed to mention our sponsors for the afternoon as I get to our guest, Advanced Office Solutions, committed to making the business the one that you're building successful. And of course, Advanced Water Systems, the people that bring you Connecticut folks that are practically reinventing water. Joining us this evening, Tami Fitzgerald, president of the North Carolina Values Coalition. We've chatted with her on numerous occasions, and just chatting with her briefly off air a few moments ago, a thought came to my mind, which we won't tackle tonight. But I think, Tami, it's worth just reminding folks the subject of HB2, and that having to do with transgender bathrooms, is still to be decided. 2020 is a deadline. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that at another time, Tami. Tonight, I want to chat with you about the issue of abortion and the recent experiences both in New York, that's New York State, and Virginia. And one option I want to make mention to you about, I want to get your opinion of before we talk about what happened in the Senate last night. The recent disclosures about Governor Northam. There are some conspiratorialists out there, or is that conspiracy theorist, whichever, who think that maybe the topic of the yearbook was developed in an effort to dismiss or deflect attention to the governor's remarks related to late-term infant murder. And I'm wondering your thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you, Lockwood. Good evening, and thank you for having me on your program.
Always a pleasure.
And this is a topic near and dear to my heart because the pro-life movement is an issue that we work on at the North Carolina Values Coalition all the time. And so this disgusting new trend that is happening right now across the country, that's happened in New York and Virginia and Rhode Island and other states that are contemplating these laws, is really a pushback or a preparation for what happens if Roe v. Wade is overturned. What you've just seen in the last 8 years is hundreds of pro-life laws passed at the state level to sort of limit abortion and to limit it when babies can feel pain and during the late term, after 5 months of gestation. And so what the left has decided to do is go fight on the same battleground in the state to prepare for the eventual overturning of Roe v. Wade. But you asked me a question about Governor Northam that I want to address. I cannot imagine that he or someone on his team would plant that story about the racist photo in his medical school yearbook, because that story morphed the other story.
Right.
I just can't imagine they would plant that, because as it is, painted as an infanticidist, I guess that's the term you would use it.
Okay.
The adjective. I mean, the comments he made about favoring infanticide, no one called for his resignation until the racist yearbook came to light. So he would have been better off just to be labeled as a person in supporting infanticide and late-term abortion. But this whole issue over racism, has led to the calls for his resignation. Now, what few people are acknowledging is that the racism that he's depicted in his yearbook picture is tied to the infanticide, because the overwhelming majority of babies that are aborted during late-term abortions are African-American babies.
Right.
And so not only is he a racist by mocking things that would really make people of color upset, but he is a racist because he supports the murder of unborn children, the majority of whom are black babies.
Tami, I left that pregnant pause there I wanted people to think about what you've just said. Tami Fitzgerald of the North Carolina Values Coalition. Tami, last evening, I think it was, Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska attempted to pass legislation that would penalize doctors who failed to quote, exercise the proper degree of care in the case of a child who survives an abortion or attempted abortion. And it failed. It failed. He was simply seeking a unanimous vote. But apparently, Senator Patty Murray of Washington State refused and to even acknowledge the bill. And of course, it failed miserably. I'm wondering, is this, and boy, I'm going to use a description, do you think that this is the issue that that the Democrats are, this is the hill on which they're willing to die? I mean, this is, and I mean that in the sense that they're willing to take, this is winner take all. They are willing to go all the way to the max on this issue. Is that what I'm taking from this vote last night?
I think that's right. I mean, my heavens, when a bill is brought to the floor in the Senate that would basically say if a baby is born alive as a result of an abortion that didn't work, you have to keep it alive and protect its life. If Democrats can't vote for that, what kind of party are they? And undoubtedly what happened last night when Patty Murray blocked the bill is that she is a radical pro-abortion supporter. She's from a state where she's pretty safe. This is not going to keep her from getting reelected in Washington State. And she's been supported by the pro-abortion industry. And so that is what the Democrats, many of them, have a lot of favors to pay back to Planned Parenthood and other pro-abortion organizations like Emily's List, NARAL Pro-Choice. Those organizations are now calling in their chips, and they're making sure that people in the Senate stop this bill. So last night it was done on a unanimous consent motion, and so one senator objected. It failed, and so Patty Murray was the sacrificial lamb, and she objected to the bill. But as I understand it, the Republican majority is going to bring the bill back to the floor for a roll call vote.
Grand.
And then they're going to put every Democrat in the Senate on the record as to where they stand on protecting babies who have been born and are alive and kicking on the table, and yet their lives can be snuffed out by an abortionist.
Our guest this afternoon, Tami Fitzgerald, we're chatting with her about the issue of abortion. We're using the word infanticide. I'm going to go ahead and broaden it to say infant murder, or we're going to just dispose of them, disposal. I want to chat with our guest here in just a few moments about the role of this issue in North Carolina politics, and in light of the fact that Virginia is literally contiguous to North Carolina, what influence might the Virginia law have on the state? Stay with us here on Viewpoints this afternoon, where our guest again is Tami Fitzgerald of the North Carolina Values Coalition. We'll give you the website here in just a moment. Our guest this evening, Tami Fitzgerald of the North Carolina Values Coalition. We're talking about the topic of abortion, and of course, it's fascinating, Tami, that this has become the issue. I guess all because of you mentioned Roe v. Wade and, of course, the concern associated with Brett Kavanaugh. But to go to such extremes, and by the way, as I reintroduce Tami to you, I just want to remind you about the website, ncvalues.org, ncvalues.org. Tami, we've looked at it from the macro perspective of the Senate and Congress. Let's look at it now at the state perspective. What is the circumstances in North Carolina? What is the mood in North Carolina, and what influence will Virginia have on the North Carolina political scene?
Well, it's interesting, Lockwood, because if you want to know how a political party is going to govern, you should look at the bills they file when they don't have the majority, because that tells you what they want to get passed. That tells you how they would govern if they're ever in the majority. And so looking at what Democrats in North Carolina filed in the year 2017, 2 years ago, they filed House Bill 563 and Senate Bill 588 called the Whole Woman's Health Act. And it's a bill almost identical to what New York did and what Virginia tried to do. It was filed in the House by Representatives Fisher, Cunningham, Meyer, and Billy Richardson. And in the Senate, the primary sponsors were Senator Shadhiri Van Dyne, who's actually running for lieutenant governor in 2020. She's just announced. And Bryant, who has left the Senate. But this bill basically would allow abortion up to the day of delivery, until the moment of delivery.
Wait a second.
Just like New York.
Wait a second. Tammy, hold on. I'm missing something. This was introduced in 2017?
Yes, it was. It didn't go anywhere because of the Republican majorities that controlled the legislature, but it was introduced as a bill. And it's even a little bit more radical than New York's bill, because the New York bill only allowed abortion up to the day of delivery for the life or health of the mother. But this bill would strike life and health of the mother, and you could have a late-term abortion up till the moment of delivery under this bill for any reason or no reason at all. And the other thing the bill did is it would have struck the requirement that abortions be performed by qualified doctors, licensed physicians who are either licensed as OBGYN doctors or who have experience in performing abortions. This bill would have allowed any healthcare provider to perform abortions. So it could have been a nurse, it could be a midwife, a nurse practitioner, and this is so they can keep the pipeline of providers full, because abortion doctors are shunned by their colleagues, and they're afraid they're going to run out of them. So this would allow any healthcare provider to perform abortions. And then it would strike the whole provision. We've had in our North Carolina law for 40 years a ban on abortions after 20 weeks. And we just tightened that up 2 years ago or 4 years ago to require that a late-term abortion could only be performed for a medical emergency, which is defined as something that threatens the life of the mother, not the health of the mother, but the life. And so under this bill, that whole provision is struck, and there's just no requirements of any kind for a late-term abortion. It's just open season on unborn babies. And the other thing it did is we had some reporting requirements that we were able to get into the law to require abortion doctors to report why there was a medical emergency justifying a late-term abortion. Well, of course, they struck all of that out. And then it makes any state law that burdens access to abortion unenforceable. So this basically would repeal every reform that we've gotten passed in the last 8 years in North Carolina. I mean, the 72-hour waiting period, the ban on webcam abortions, the ban on non-licensed OBGYNs performing abortions, all kinds of good laws that we've been able to pass that protect the life of the mother, not just the baby, but the life of the mother and the health of the mother. And so this bill would strike it all, and basically it defines what laws place a burden on access to abortion. And I'm just going to read a couple of the things they put in their bill, but forces abortion providers to cease providing abortions, or increases the time a woman must wait to have an abortion, or serves no other purpose than to stigmatize patients and abortion providers. I mean, all of the little catchphrases that pro-abortion folks use. And it basically would be abortion on demand at any time for any reason by anyone.
Now, this, by the way, I'm looking it up. I went to the website, North Carolina Legislature, on this particular case. It's Senate Bill 588. It has a companion bill in the House Bill 563. That's House 563 or Senate or S 588. You've got to go to the North Carolina Legislature. And you, by the way, have to go to the 2017-2018 session. I'm sharing this information with the audience if they want to look it up. Whole Woman's Health Act. And I think this is an important story, Tammy, that this is a bill that is not unique to New York, or in the case of Virginia, not unique to Virginia, and that some of the specifics there. And so I'm wondering, did New York copy our bill? I mean, were we the pioneers in this concept?
I have no idea.
It sounds
I'm
like
sure
it.
This bill in North Carolina was written by Planned Parenthood and NARAL Pro-Choice. So if the New York bill was written by those groups, yes,
right, yep,
they're
okay.
all coming from the same source. But I do think this is a trend. It's a strategy nationwide to file these types of bills in state legislatures and see if they can get them passed. And what you're seeing right now is they're going for the low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to pass them in states like New York and Virginia, where they now have Democrat majorities in the legislature there, because they know they can get them passed there. But I expect to see this bill filed again in North Carolina this year, and all it does is indicate if the Republicans no longer had control of the General Assembly, and Governor Cooper was still in power, this is exactly what they would do to North Carolina. We would look just like New York. And so that's why it's so important to make a change in who sits in the governor's office in the 2020 election and to protect the pro-life legislature that we have.
Well, there's that, and it's unfortunate that I feel that there are Democrats out there, Tami, who are cringing when they hear these stories as well. It's just unfortunate that we don't have, if you will, I'm struggling for a description here, but the leadership of people with strong moral convictions. With about a minute to go, Tami, what next? I'm not seeing a hue and cry across the state, and not just because it's not in the papers, but is this being... I think this is important. This is a message that needs to be said and heard at meetings everywhere. I'm talking service groups such as Rotary, Kiwanis, as well as churches. Is there an effort to get the message out to the public?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we work on that all the time. We send out a lot of emails to our constituents to let them know what is happening. And we are on this all the time. So we are planning to run some pro-life legislation during this legislative session because we will continue to do this every session as long as we have pro-life legislators sitting in that seat.
Well, this is important for the voters to keep in mind as well. So I do appreciate this. I've got a caller very quickly. Let me go to Lisa in Newport, and if you will, Tami, thank you very much. Lisa, I've got about 30 seconds. Yes, ma'am.
This is I don't know, it might not be easy. I'm having trouble fathoming how these people think that this is not infanticide. What is their...
Okay, hold that thought.
Screwball reasoning behind it.
What's your quick answer for that one, Tami?
They don't care. I mean, they don't care that it's infanticide. What they're most interested in, and this is their talking point, that women have the right to control their own bodies. That's what they say. Yeah. And so they do not recognize that the unborn baby or the born baby, the one who's born, even, that they are persons, that they have human rights as persons.
All right.
All they care about is the mother's convenience, what's convenient for the mother.
Lisa, stay on the line. I want to chat with you off air. Tami Fitzgerald, likewise. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. Tami Fitzgerald of the North Carolina Values Coalition, ncvalues.org.